This is 6 Ways to Say Goodbye, a play in one act, written by me. I'm going to introduce you to my cast of characters. First up is Wyatt. He's a man in his early 30s wearing khaki pants and a rumpled button-down shirt. He is played tonight by Lou Cinelli.
Hi, I'm Lou Cinelli. I was born and raised in Lyons, spent half a lifetime teaching speech and drama in California, and I've returned now to Winter Wonderland.
Next is Lucille, a woman in her mid-50s wearing yoga pants, a colorful tunic, several long necklaces, and multiple bracelets and rings. She is played tonight by Stephanie Olson.
I have been acting out and acting up since I could talk.
Next, we have George. He's a man in his late 50s wearing neatly pressed dress pants, dress shirt, and tie. He is played tonight by Tom Nichols.
Hi, welcome everybody. I've been working in theater and various performances for about 60 years, 40 of them with PYTCo. And I wanted to say that I'm very happy to be a part of Bethany's play, especially because it's one of the first 2 scripted plays to be performed on this stage in over 100 years.
Next, we have Olive. She's a woman in her 80s wearing bright polyester pants and a matching top. Her hair, white and curled, is freshly done from the hair salon. Tonight, she is played by Barb Hancock.
My name is Barbara Hancock, maiden name Newell. You may know some. And I have come back to Penang, where I was born. I've been gone in Oklahoma for 50 years, half a century, and I'm back now, and I'm so happy to be here.
Next, we have Noah, a boy in his mid-teens wearing baggy jeans and a hoodie. He is played by Joe Droney.
Hi, I'm Joe Droney. I'm a senior in high school and have been doing PYTCo productions since I was in 3rd grade.
And finally, we have Belinda, a woman in her mid-40s wearing loose-fitting pants, an oversized t-shirt, and a bulky cardigan. She is played tonight by Anita Gaston.
Hi, I'm Anita Gaston. I'm a registered nurse, and I love being in theater productions.
The time of our show is the present evening. We are in the basement of a church. 7 folding chairs are arranged in a semicircle. On the center chair is a clipboard with paper and a pen. Behind the chairs is a card table. On it are a coffee urn, a stack of styrofoam cups, and a towering plate of donuts. At Rise, Wyatt fusses with the chairs, moving them slightly and then moving them back to the way he had them originally. Lucille and George are at the coffee urn, filling their cups but not talking. Wyatt looks at his watch, then at the empty chairs.
Okay, I guess we should get started.
Lucille and George move to the circle, taking seats opposite each other and farthest from the center chair. Wyatt picks up his clipboard and pen and sits down.
I'd like to thank you both for being here. I wasn't sure what kind of turnout we'd get, but...
A loud bang is heard from off stage, a door slamming. Wyatt, Lucille, and George turn their heads in the direction of the noise. Olive comes in from stage right, pushing a rollator walker. She crosses the stage, taking her time not because she can't move quickly, but because she chooses not to. Lucille and George continue to drink their coffee. Wyatt starts to stand, but Olive waves him off. When she reaches the circle, she pulls the folding chairs between Wyatt and George aside, sits down on her walker, and uses her feet to inch into the circle.
Is there coffee?
And donuts.
2 creams and 2 sugars.
Wyatt starts to laugh, but Olive just looks at him. He gets up and moves to the card table. While he's preparing Olive's coffee, there is another bang of the door from off stage. Noah shuffles in from stage right. He has AirPods in. Music loud enough that we can hear it. He looks at the seating arrangement, scowls, and slumps into the empty chair next to Lucille. He looks down at his phone.
You'll ruin your hearing.
Noah takes his right AirPod out.
Huh?
Lucille tilts her head at George and rolls her eyes. George shakes his head and picks at his coffee cup, dropping tiny pieces on the floor between his feet. Throughout the scene, George continues to pick at his cup until it's nearly gone, a little hill of styrofoam pieces collecting beneath him. Noah taps his phone. The music ends. He takes out his other AirPod and shoves the AirPods and phone into the front pocket of his jeans. Wyatt hands Olive her coffee and sits back down, holding his clipboard.
Thank you all for coming tonight. We're here because each of us is going through something.
Wyatt shuffles his seat, flipping the papers on his clipboard. He coughs nervously and then begins to read from the page, tapping it with his pen as he goes.
Grief is a deep and poignant distress caused by or as if by bereavement, a cause of suffering, annoying or playful criticism, an unfortunate outcome, used chiefly.
Did you say playful?
An unfortunate outcome?
No, it's a printout from Merriam-Webster. They gave it to us at training, but
Wyatt drops the clipboard to the floor and runs his hands through his hair. Then he interlaces his fingers and leans forward, resting his forearms on his legs.
let's start again. I'm Wyatt. We're here today to talk about grief. We each have our own reasons for being here, but really all of us are suffering in some way because we lost something, right? By sharing your feelings about our grief, we can start to heal. Would anyone like to share why they're here?
Noah sinks deeper into his seat and pulls his hood up. Lucille and George make prolonged eye contact before George looks away and tears furiously at his coffee cup. Olive slurps her coffee noisily. Wyatt slaps his thighs.
Okay, I'll start. My brother died 6 years ago. It was a car accident. He was drinking and driving. This was after his bachelor party, and I was supposed to be the designated driver, but I got wasted.
Wyatt looks around at the group, but no one makes eye contact. Lucille fusses with her bracelets, which make a jingling sound like silver bells.
Jamie said he was fine, and I was too drunk to know he wasn't. Long story short, he didn't have his seatbelt on. Took a curve too fast. There was a tree.
Wyatt slaps his hands together suddenly and loudly, and then lets his right hand shoot up, over, and down, imitating the path his brother's body took when it was thrown from the car.
Jesus.
Were you hurt?
I was passed out in the back seat, a bag of bones. Walked away with a concussion and a broken nose.
Noah makes a huffing sound. Olive slurps her coffee. Lucille reaches across Noah and waggles her fingers. Wyatt takes her hand, squeezes it, and lets go.
Thank you. Thank you. But really, this group is about more than just the tragedies that bring us here. It's how we cope with them and learn to move on.
I don't know how you move on from that.
Well, it's possible. And I'm going to share some strategies with you as we go along. But why don't you tell us why you're here, Mr.
It's George.
Hi, George.
This isn't AA, Grandma.
Noah laughs and then pulls the cords of his hood tight so most of his face is hidden. Olive ignores all of this, waggling her cup at Wyatt, who gets up and fixes her another cup of coffee. George bows his head.
My wife left me.
Wyatt hands Olive her coffee, sits, gestures at George to keep talking.
We've been married 22 years. I came home from Tucson, that's my company's HQ. I fly out there a few times a year, and everything was gone. Slippers under the bed, the china, the checkbook, the hanging basket thing, it's crocheted. She puts bananas in it. And we got it when we went to Mexico.
Macrame?
George snaps his fingers and points at Lucille, nodding.
Yeah, that's it, macrame, and the bananas. She took that too. She even took the toothpaste. It was like she never lived there at all.
George lets the hand that had been pointing at Lucille fall into his lap.
I thought this group was for widows.
It's a grief group. We don't.
Wait a minute. Grief isn't just for widows.
Olive clucks her tongue. Noah turns his head, peeking out from his hoodie to look from Olive to Lucille and back.
Old bat.
She's right, Mrs.
Mrs. Hanson, Olive.
Wyatt looks at Lucille.
Lucille.
Great. So, Olive, Lucille is right. Grief is part of all of our lives, whether or not we've been married.
Noah snorts.
Would you like to tell us why you're here?
Noah shakes his head.
Okay, well, we know Olive's here because she's a widow.
No,
So
I didn't say that.
Wyatt puts his hands up, palms facing Olive.
I'm sorry. Why don't you tell us why you are here, Olive?
My husband died.
George barks laughter. Noah laughs silently, putting a fist to his mouth. Lucille heaves a huge sigh.
All right. Thank you, Olive. So, Lucille, you're up.
My best friend, Suzanne.
Lucille pulls a tissue from her sleeve and dabs at her eyes.
Do you want to share with us how she died?
Lucille laughs bitterly.
You don't have to.
I wish she were dead.
Olive snorts. Lucille sneers at her.
Oh, Suzanne is most definitely alive. She's dead to me, though, or I'm dead to her. Either way, we stopped talking after 40 years of friendship. 40. One day I was helping her plan Nikki's baby shower, and the next day she must have blocked my number because I can't get through on the phone. If she's getting my texts, she's not answering them. I wish she had died, you know? And then I could weep over her body in the coffin and leave carnations on her grave instead of getting sick to my stomach every time I walk in the grocery store. Because what if she's in there and says something? Or what if she's in there and doesn't say anything? Which would be worse?
Take a breath, Lucille.
Lucille takes an exaggerated breath in through her nose and exhales loudly through her mouth. She puts her hands on her knees with her fingers together and closes her eyes like she is meditating. After a few seconds, her eyes fly open and she begins to sob dramatically.
How does someone, you just can't walk away from everything. I mean, can you? I don't know what to do when things like that happen. How does somebody do that?
Oh, shut your mouth.
Noah, Wyatt, and George turn to look at Olive. Lucille hangs her head and continues to cry quietly, her shoulders shaking.
Between the two of you, I swear,
Olive looks at Wyatt.
I don't know why he's here. I know why he's here. Do you want to know why his wife left him?
Olive points at George.
And I know why she's here. Do you want to know why her best friend stopped talking to her?
Olive points at Lucille. She shuffles her feet to bring herself more into the center of the circle of chairs. Noah straightens in his seat. Olive looks at George, then at Lucille. She shakes her head and smiles bitterly.
Are you going to make me say it? All right then. My husband Martin, may he rest in peace.
Olive crosses herself, but incorrectly. Noah giggles.
He was in bad shape after the stroke, and I can't do what I used to with what my arthritis in my hip, so we hired a girl to come to the house.
George stands, walks away from the circle of chairs, and begins to pace along the front of stage right. Lucille sits very still, her hands in fists on her lap.
Sweet, sweet thing. She made sure Martin got his meds, and she helped him dress and comb his hair, and she helped him in the shower and helped him on the toilet.
Noah grimaces.
Lucille, are you okay?
Sit down, George. You're making me nervous.
George pauses for a moment and then resumes his pacing. Olive turns her head to face George.
In the afternoons when Martin would nap, the girl and I would play gin rummy, and she talked to me about her life, about her husband, who was always working late, who missed their twins' birthday, and whose shirt smelled like incense, like he'd been hanging out with hippies.
Noah and Wyatt look at George, who stops pacing with his back to the circle.
Okay, you know, I think we should.
And she would also tell me about her girlfriend, maid of honor at her wedding, godmother to her boys, her oldest, dearest friend.
Olive swivels her head dramatically to look at Lucille.
Her best friend who loved to burn incense.
Noah turns toward Lucille and sniffs loudly.
Oh, damn.
Lucille turns away from Olive, pressing the tissue in her hand to her mouth. Wyatt holds his head in his hands. George looks at his watch and slowly walks back to his seat. After a long moment of silence, there is a bang off stage, the door opening. Belinda barges in.
I'm so sorry I'm late.
Belinda flutters around the room, dropping her purse in front of the open chair between Noah and Wyatt, and then buzzing over to the table.
Oh, coffee, perfect. I'm running on fumes. Royce had baseball practice till 6, and then Kaylin had to be at the high school for drama club. And of course, no one thought to put the high school near the baseball field. No, that would be too easy, right?
Wyatt, Noah, Lucille, and George gape at Belinda. Olive stares at George and then Lucille, her lip curled in disgust. Belinda sits, then looks over her shoulder at the donuts and frowns. Then back to the circle, her frown gone and her face now open and expectant.
Would you like to tell us why you're here, Miss?
Oh, yes, of course. It's Mrs., though. Mrs. Christensen. Belinda Christensen. You probably know my husband, Bill. He runs the hardware store, and he's deputy mayor.
Belinda claps her hands and beams at the others, but they don't react. She again looks over her shoulder at the donuts and frowns. Wyatt gestures at her to go on.
Right. So this isn't my first time, of course. But I guess, this time it's really because I'm in mourning.
Wyatt nods.
For who I was before, right? Like when I look at my senior yearbook and I see that cheerleader and that princess on the prom court, and I can't understand how that's me. How did she become this? I look at her slim legs and her slender arms, and some nights I stand in front of the bathroom mirror after the kids have gone to bed, and I just cry, Not loud enough so that Billy can hear, of course, but crying for, I guess, what my body used to be.
I'm sorry.
What?
Your body.
Belinda turns most of the way around toward the donuts.
I'm sorry. I'm trying very hard to be polite. But why are there donuts here? Why would you do that?
I just thought people would like a treat. The training
Your
says...
training says to bring donuts?
Not specifically donuts, no, just a treat.
What have you got against donuts, Mrs. Deputy Mayor?
Belinda squeaks in shock. Noah bends double with laughter. George and Lucille make eye contact, smiling, and then quickly look away from each other.
It's just, I've been coming to these meetings for years, and
Belinda,
it's just the opposite of why
Belinda,
isn't it?
where do you think you are right now?
Belinda looks around the circle slowly, frowning more and more. She turns at last to Wyatt, her mouth hanging open.
Weight Watchers?
The meeting devolves into chaos. Everyone stands except Noah, who takes his AirPods out of his pocket and puts them in his ears.
I knew
Do you
this
want her
would
back?
happen.
Is
This
that what you
town
meant
is
by
too
what you
small.
said before?
We should have gone
Do
to
you
the meeting
miss
in
her?
Geneva.
Next
She's
week, we'll
better
start
off
to
without
talk
the
about
both of you.
strategies
You
for
pretend to
coping
love
with
her,
grief.
and neither of you
I
knows
look forward to
what love
seeing you
is.
all again.
George and Lucille exit stage right with Olive hot on their heels.
I'll see you later.
Don't bother.
I'd better not see either of you next weekend.
Belinda hoists her bag onto her shoulder, frowns one last time at the donuts, and leaves stage right, shaking her head.
Well then,
Wyatt's shoulders sag. He heaves a heavy sigh.
not exactly how I pictured this going.
Wyatt begins slowly folding the chairs and leaning them up against the wall next to the table. Noah gets up and helps.
It took years after Jamie died before I could even talk about it. I never thought I'd get trained to run a grief support group. And then when I was walking in tonight, I thought, this is it. This is how I make a difference. This is how I take the worst thing that ever happened to me and make something good out of it,
Wyatt looks at Noah, who is standing in front of the donuts. We hear the music from his AirPods. Wyatt shakes his head and smiles.
Yep, that's perfect.
Noah takes out one AirPod.
Huh?
I said, take as many as you want.
Noah nods, then stuffs donuts into the pouch of his hoodie. He begins walking to stage right. Wyatt picks up a donut and takes a bite. Almost to the side of the stage, Noah stops and turns around. Wyatt looks over at him. Noah wipes at his eye roughly, flicking away a tear.
I'll see you next week.
Wyatt smiles kindly. Blackout. Thank you, everybody. I am here, so if you have any questions, you're free to ask me questions or ask this marvelous cast some questions about our little show.
Lady in the green shirt, green jacket.
Yeah.
You have theater experience? Stephanie, theater experience.
Do I have what?
Theater experience.
Oh, just a little bit.
It shows.
Thank you, I think.
Yeah, in the white. I did tell Joe tonight what his backstory is. Do you guys want to know? Noah's here because his dog died, and he was really sad about it, and he just wanted people to help him with his grief. Alex? I do not have playwriting experience. When PYTCo announced this little playwright reading thing from Jason, Dan Green contacted me and said, do you know any playwrights? We're looking for one-act submissions. And I said no, and then I said, can I write a play? And then I did. So thank you so much to PYTCo, because I never would have done this without that little competition. So thank you, Jason. Jason?
When you were writing for Noah, all the other stuff was great and very funny. Did you ever think to add something to make it a little more clear that Noah's intention was just to be around other people that were reading?
I don't think I ever really thought about that. I always knew what Noah's backstory was, and I always thought if it hadn't devolved in the way that it did because of the affair, that Noah would have spoken up. He would have gotten more comfortable with people and told people while he was there. Because I was telling someone this the other day, a lot of my writing, my fiction writing, is about grief because I find it really interesting. And I thought, you know, if we think of a grief support group, we probably think of widows like Olive, right, coming to mourn somebody, but there's so many other forms of grief. And I thought, why would a 16-year-old boy, like his mom didn't make him come, he chose to come, you know, and I thought, well, we love our pets so much, it just made sense. And it's an important part of grief, I think, that we all deal with. So I just like to load up backstory and then have to tell you afterwards, apparently.
Have you ever thought of expanding it? So that we know what the young man's problem was?
I hadn't thought about it. I'll just tell you every time if we perform it again. I have been inspired, though. I want to write a full play now because this experience was really fun. Any questions for my marvelous cast? Let's give them a round of applause. And also a big round of applause for PYTCo for doing this and giving us all this really awesome opportunity.
Yes.
And for you all for coming here. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
It has been so much fun.
It has, yes.
It has.